Welcome to the Coptimizer Podcast, a platform dedicated to uncuffing your true potential in public safety. We're here to provide you with valuable tips and insights that will help you optimize your life and career. I'm retired Chief Patrick Flannelly, and I'm honored to be your guide and coach on this journey. Here, I'll share the latest insights and strategies to help you survive and thrive in the demanding world of public safety. Our noble duty is to protect and serve. We embody the role of peacemakers in our communities. However, this profession's immense physical and mental demands come with a price. If we fail to take a proactive approach for our well-being and lead ourselves first, then the stress from the job can and will lead to poor health outcomes. We have all seen it play out. Not only does this impact our professional and personal lives, but it also affects our ability to fulfill this sacred duty. Like many of you, my journey has been filled with tremendous challenges, with highs and lows. However, through creativity, experience, and a positive attitude, I successfully managed over 30 years in law enforcement, emerging healthy and happy. Now, I am driven to share what I've learned to show you that the path is not all doom and gloom. There is hope and a profound purpose in serving your community, and I'm here to show you that it does not have to come at the cost of your health and well-being. Join us as we explore cutting-edge research, interview top experts, and share inspiring stories of transformation. Whether on duty or off, it's time to optimize your potential and live your best life. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. This is the Coptimizer Podcast. Greetings all. Welcome back to another episode of the Coptimizer Podcast. Today, I've got another exciting guest. I say that every time, and time to shut her down when I don't have an exciting guest, right? But I've got Chief Chad McCluskey from the Waukee, Iowa Police Department, and we're going to have a good conversation today. We met last month and wound up being on a long call. Just kind of had a great discussion about optimizing leadership, wellness, technology, and modern policing. And then we eventually got around to the idea of the new building. And Chief McCluskey is moving into a new police department, or just did, and he's getting ready to give a tour. So, Chief, thanks for being here.
Yeah, hopefully everybody finds it exciting.
Well, it's all relative.
It is.
But if you're looking at building a new police department, if you're in that process, that's something that we both had in common. That was my last major project as a chief before I retired a couple of years ago. And it was a very rewarding project, but also a very thankless and time-sucking venture that pulled on my soul from time to time, but it was all worth it.
There's a ton of energy that goes into it, no doubt about that, on top of your regular daily duties, of course. So yeah.
Yeah, I learned things like I never thought I would learn, but we'll get to those in just a minute. But hey, if you don't mind, maybe just give the audience a little bit of background on who you are. And I know your background, you really came from Kansas before Iowa, and just a little bit of lead up to also what your new role, serving as the president for the Iowa Chiefs of Police Association.
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up and started my career in Kansas, South Central Kansas, just east of Wichita, in a community of about 10,000 at Augusta, Kansas. And early on, I knew I wanted to be in emergency services, but I was on the fire path, not the police path. That was sheer accident or coercion. But so I started in the fire service at 13 years old as a junior firefighter, and we could do everything the full-time firefighters and volunteers could do, except ride on the front of grass trucks and go into burning buildings. So
How cool is that? 13.
it was incredible, I tell you. Great experience. We had the department I grew up on is kind of unique. Oh, it's very unique. It's a true public safety department. So the police officers fight fire, the firefighters carry guns. They rotate back and forth between divisions, or they did. I think they may have stopped that now, but that does not work most places. But it worked very well for us. And so we also, in addition to the city of 10,000, we had 144 square mile fire district. So we had city fire, county fire, paid volunteer, police fire, all commingled in this one space, which was incredible for learning and growth. As I said, it doesn't work most places, but it did for us. So from 13 to 18 was on the junior firefighters. Since I turned 18, I went to the volunteers. Got hired in dispatch as my first paid role with the department, and spent about a year and a half in dispatch. And I always laugh when I tell people that, because they think of a larger dispatch organization where you have call takers and dispatchers and people running computers. And back in the late 90s, there was one person in there doing all of that. And spent about a year and a half in dispatch. Was fortunate enough to move to the fire division as a civilian firefighter, even though I wasn't 21, couldn't carry a gun. And that's kind of all I wanted to do. And so they moved me back there. Well, then when I turned 21, they came up and said, "We're public safety. You have to go to the police academy." And I was like, "Hold up, that's not at all what I signed up for." But I didn't have a choice. So completed the Kansas law enforcement basic training in Hutchinson or Yoder, Kansas in 97, and came back and was on the road for 6 months, 9 months. And they asked me if I wanted to rotate. Well, I guess I didn't ask. I got told I was rotating back to the fire division. And I was like, well, I kind of like this cop thing, you know? And so spent a year and a half. And then in 99, I got promoted to watch commander, which was a sergeant, and also got a K9. And then for the next 20 some years, I was a watch commander and K9, ran 3 dogs, and stayed in the patrol side, did the fire side when I was off duty or something big came up. But had a detector only chocolate lab, and then an apprehension dual purpose Malinois. And then the third dog was dual purpose and a SWAT dog. Completely by far the best assignment in the world. Working with canines is incredible. And you watch kids learn, and you watch the dog learn, and it's just mind blowing how intelligent they are. So, in 2018, I was lucky enough to be selected as a public safety director. So I was going to be the chief of both police and fire in a Des Moines suburb called Windsor Heights. They were looking to have one chief over 2 separate departments. So they didn't do any rotation or anything like that, but in a move to save some money, they were looking for one chief over the 2 departments, and I happen to have that background. Had a very successful career there, great people over there, a lot of support. They're a small landlocked community, about 5,000 people. The city's 1.41 square miles in the middle of Des Moines Metro, and loved it over there. And then in 2023, the position in Waukee opened up when my predecessor and friend John Quinn retired. And so I put in for that. And once again, my career was blessed to be selected for that role. So I went from the smallest suburb in the Des Moines metro area to the fastest growing suburb in the Des Moines metro area. And we're number 11 in the United States for growth. So we're growing at an average of 7 to 10 people per day moving into our city. So great opportunities, incredible city. Again, great support, great city administration, elected officials. And literally last week, we moved into a brand new building that our old building, we had our investigations division literally in old holding cells. So my investigation sergeant's office was literally in a holding cell with carpet on it. And that building, the police side was about 10,000 square feet. The total building size was about 22,000 square feet. And we moved into the new building that's 90,000 plus square feet, and 2/3 of that's police. So very exciting times for us and for growth. So, but a little bit about me. Went to Wichita State University for my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Got a master's in business from Webster University with an emphasis on HR management. I'm a huge education guy. I don't think that's everything, of course, but I think it gives you some, diversity in thought and ability to deal with different people and different personalities. And I tell my officers all the time, if you're looking at a secondary graduate degree, do something outside of criminal justice. Don't get an undergraduate in criminal justice and a graduate in criminal justice. That does you no good. If you get hurt, you decide you don't like it, whatever. So get some diversity under you and do business or something like that where you've got some options. So,
Well, business always comes in handy if you're in a leadership position as well.
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, because running police departments is really there are a lot of similarities to business endeavors. But so Wichita State, that's how's their baseball program these days?
It used to be great. I don't know that it's great
It
anymore.
used to be the dominant program, but
Yeah.
just like that you just knew Wichita State for baseball.
Yep. Them and basketball, especially women's basketball, they used to have a stellar women's basketball program. And the funny thing about Wichita State is they 100 years ago they had football and they hadn't had it. And of course, every 10 or 12 years it comes up and they're going to renovate the stadium and bring it back, and they just haven't ever done it. But yeah, the baseball team was phenomenal. Women's basketball was phenomenal. I think they've kind of taken a back seat on a couple of those things lately, but it's a great Midwestern school for sure.
Well, you definitely moved into the if you're interested in women's basketball, right? Iowa is kind of the hotbed, especially now
Yep.
we're the benefactor of Caitlin Clark, just down the road here from me, playing for Indiana Fever, but.
Yeah, she needs a little love over there. I feel bad for her. That team just, man, this latest teammate she's got's really stepped up and helped her out. But I think she had a rough go making that move to that new team. So
Yeah, it's such a fascinating dynamic to kind of sit back and watch. You can learn a lot, right, about organizations, about like just like interpersonal relationships. Like she's the best thing that's happened to the WNBA by far. I mean,
yeah.
it's not even close. And the amount of resentment that she gets just from people in the league, and of course, this is all just observational because I don't know her. I don't know her personality. I just know she's, she brings a lot of excitement to the game. And I mean, they're just Indiana now is obviously we're known for basketball here in Indiana, and women's basketball all the way even down to like the elementary school level is big. So she just brought it to a whole new level.
Well, and truthfully, leadership.
Yeah.
You look at the way she acts in the face of adversity and some of these things, and it's kind of funny because I don't know, 6 months ago or so, there was something happening that she was in a game or something, and I think her dad was there. And she went over to her dad, or her dad yelled out something, but you could tell on TV what he was telling her was let it go. Whatever had happened, just let it go.
Yeah.
And a leadership standpoint, to be able to face that, hatred really is the way to put it. And keep an attitude and keep your head in the game and work through that. There's a lot of leadership lessons to be learned there too, I think.
Yeah. And number one of all being hard work pays off.
Yeah.
And cops could learn a lot from that, right? You got to have thick skin. Yeah, because there's always gonna be people that don't like you. And since from a chief's perspective, there's definitely a lot to be learned there, because sometimes there is no right answer. It's just you only make the best answer you can, and that you're going to get hate on both sides of the decision. So
right.
Yeah, that's all right. That's really cool. So I hate to put you on the spot here, but it'll be fun because since you have a background in fire and police, it's interesting, like the space in your new agency, but also in how were decisions made on how to allocate resources in your first police department? Like how do you determine if someone's going to go work on the police side of the house or on the fire side? Is it just based on availability or needs? Like how'd that work?
So, yeah, in Augusta, you were hired as a public safety officer. So you knew getting hired in that you were going to do both roles, and the way it was lined out in theory, and of course this never works because you constantly have attrition. But in theory, the idea was that out of a 2-year period, you would spend 18 months on the street as a cop and 6 months in the fire division as a fire officer. And kind of one other component of that, with us being both paid and volunteer fire, it's kind of a unique setup that people are like, ooh, that's unsafe. Well, it worked for us, but we had one person on duty in the fire division at a time, typically, except during the day when the command staff was there. And so in the middle of the night, if a fire came out, they set off pagers. People came in to fill it up, grab trucks, and go to calls. And then you had, at that time, we had 3 on patrol at a time. And if it was in the city, then patrol would help, the fire guy get set up and running because everybody had that training. If it was in the county, then that may not be the case. But they were hired in as public safety officers. Some liked it, some didn't, some preferred one or the other. But right off the bat, being hired in, that was the role. And like I said, I think that's changed in the last couple of years to where they've got more of a focus on your either fire or law enforcement because it's so hard to recruit for us, number one, but then you start throwing that second discipline on it. It's impossible. So I think they started to split that out a little bit. But yeah, you were just hired in and you knew, that was the role.
Well, why didn't they just why don't you just work your 8-hour shift as a cop and then when you need to rest, you just become a fireman?
Well, and that's interesting to bring it up because we were on 12s and
I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, you truly could, on nights there ain't anything going on. So, you know.
Well, I've had some interesting conversations with my fire buddies over the years. Don't get me wrong, firemen, they firefighters have a very important job. And honestly, sadly, as we're having this conversation, right, we just saw the dangers they face, sadly, in a way that cops do, and with what happened just the other day in Idaho.
Yep.
And that's not the first time that's happened. Sadly, it's been happening more and more in the last decade. So it's almost like you're going to have to start, worrying about, the safety of your fire personnel just going out and doing their job rather than just going out, from the perspective of the dangers they already face when you got to go fight a fire. But
yeah, and honestly, I never thought that when I was a kid growing up, and even in my early years, I would have never thought we'd be carrying, rifle plates on an ambulance or an engine.
yeah,
And we're doing that up here because you just don't know.
yeah. Oh, and our guys do the same here, and then plus with active shooter response, crisis response, heading in, when you have to go into warm zones, and there's just there's so many different things to worry about. But it does bring up some very legitimate questions about public safety spends, and even just to go back, you mentioned in the dispatch center, the role, how it's evolved, and it's going to be different if you're in large metropolitan areas, right? What you were referring to as call takers versus dispatchers. Well, they literally are dividing up the task to try to get the most efficient response done. When you have high volumes of calls that are coming in, thousands of calls a day in these, large, major metropolitan areas, New York, LA, places like that, might not make sense to have a dispatcher trained in all of the different things that someone in a small police department might have to do. So the job could be much more difficult, much more challenging in a small department rather than a large department. You just see, so it just all depends. And when we think about 18,000 different police departments with all those different missions, different sizes, I just don't know that we'll ever get to a one size fits all. But I am curious, kind of because you do have a unique experience and a unique background about where maybe there is opportunities for synergy and, just I like spitballing ideas. Like if you could wave a wand, what might a public safety agency look like versus a police department and fire department in larger areas?
It definitely is a great topic of discussion. And, in Kansas, we had a handful of public safety agencies when I started. When I left, Augusta's the last one. The rest of them had split out. Again, when I came up here, in Windsor, as the chief over there, they were two separate departments. I was over both. The challenge, I think, really, and to your point, every role has gotten so technical, whether you're talking about EMS, fire, police. There's so much stuff that goes into it. There's so much training we have to do. There's so many requirements on you now. One of the things I tell people all the time when we start talking about budgets, and I had a previous council person that I told this to, was, you want to cut the budget, but in reality, the only place I can cut a budget on for the police department for the most part is training and equipment, right? Because salaries are set, overtime's a need, fuel's a need. So you're talking about training and equipment. And out of that, training is going to be number one. So you're telling me to cut the budget, reduce my training costs, while at the same time telling me that the officer has to go out on the street, make the exact right decision every single time, and face criticisms for doing that with no training. And if you back that up a step and you look at recruitment, where we're at in recruitment now, we don't have the candidates we used to have and the quality of candidates we used to have. So now you're telling me hire a less qualified person, don't spend as much training on them, but they better make the right decision every single time. And that just doesn't work. When I brought that to this council person's attention, they're like, I hadn't thought of it that way. And I'm like, that's exactly what we're facing.
Yeah.
And fire and EMS are the same way.
Kudos for you. Kudos. Sorry to interrupt, but just
Yeah.
kudos for you to make that argument, because it's yeah, I think as a chief, it's one of our primary responsibilities right now is to educate our elected officials on what our needs are. And like I've written about this multiple times, right? Everybody, elected officials, oftentimes, when people like the police, they want to be seen with us, they want pictures with us. And I say it's like they love us right up until the time it comes to start writing checks, and
Yep.
then it's like, oh well, we can't afford that, we can't afford that, we can't afford that. And like, what other profession in the world do you expect to defund and then expect better performance, and at the same time while you're tasking them with more responsibilities?
Right. Yeah. Everything gets thrown on us.
Yeah.
And, where I was going with that is fire and EMS is the same way. When I was over fire and EMS in Windsor, I know fire. I know it like the back of my hand. I grew up on it, went to school for it, have an associate's degree in it. I don't know EMS as well. And I walked in there and told them day one, give me a building fire and I'll figure it out and show you the way to do it. But if you're talking about medical care and EMS, I'm not that guy. I don't know that. But you look at liability for medical providers and them doing the right things and medical directors giving, orders and how they do things. And it's just everything's gotten so technical that it's really not a good place to try to do a public safety model any longer because there's so many requirements on stuff. We kill our team with training, just kill them with training. And some of it's mandated, some of it's not, some of it's stuff that, internally is our culture in our department. But then to take that and try to do the same thing on the fire side and the same thing on EMS, it just gets to a point where it's impossible. There's only so much time in a day. And I've had some conversations with different people and communities and recruiters and people about the public safety model. And, the first thing I tell them is, look, that model where I came from, it worked very, very well for us for many years. That does not work most places. And, it's not a great experiment to try that because you need to have the right fit as you would anything to make those positions happen. And it's just, we can't recruit cops. We can't recruit firefighters. How the hell are you going to recruit somebody to be both? So, it's a real challenge, but from a budgetary standpoint, people look at it as, oh, one person can do two roles. Well, maybe, but I was getting paid as a chief, not as two chiefs also. And part of that was my desire and my goals as well. So I'm not at all complain about that, but you got to look at if you're saving money, that workload's got to go somewhere, right? And that
Right.
expertise has to go somewhere.
Yeah, and that's the whole point is like the the demand on the services for public safety are going up. They're not going down.
Yep.
but the interest in the profession is down. It's lagging. And I've had a few experts on the podcast in the past, and we talked about that. And, I think a lot of chiefs relate to the game and understanding that you're not just competing against other police departments for the qualified personnel, you're competing against other industries, because the number of young people in the age group that's eligible to be policing has shrank in America, and it continues to shrink. So um, you're competing against private sector jobs, technology jobs, everything else. And, where this old school mentality where public safety, it tended to be a generational type of profession with some nepotism involved. We just don't see that anymore. And it's rare for anyone inside of policing now to advocate for their loved ones or their friends to join the policing profession, which is, that's a whole nother topic of conversation, but it just makes the job for chiefs like you, whether you're on the police or fire side, even more and more difficult. So we've got to get funding. Yep. So this is a great segue, right? Because one of your roles, and one of the reasons I reached out to you and wanted to get to know you a little bit, is because I served on our executive committee, our board of directors for our Chiefs Association. I was a chief for 10 years and spent almost all 10 of those years serving in one capacity or another. And I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a ton. And so one of the things I'm really interested now that I have a little bit of time to do this is to learn about how each state manages these associations, how they establish priorities. And really, I'm really curious, like in Iowa, like what, as a profession, what are you guys concerned about in policing? And, how do you approach things, and really just generally what the role entails, and help others, and maybe just sway some people inside of policing to consider being more active in their chiefs associations. Because I know that was another thing that was frustrating, is oftentimes it was difficult to get chiefs to participate and to really weigh in and provide a voice, because that's what we need more than anything.
No, absolutely. And the Iowa Police Chiefs Association is an amazing group. I'm sure every state's is, but we've got between 200 and 300 members, I believe, across the state. Not all of those are chiefs. We allow command staff to be associate members so they can be on the roster. They can't vote, they can't hold office, but we've got communication methods that are very informative, where someone can ask a question, everybody can respond, everybody gets the benefit of seeing that. You can go back and search those topics later and find that information to come back out. We do an annual conference that's a 3.5-day conference. This year we brought in 80 vendors for that. And so, large to small businesses that have something to offer law enforcement, we can go touch and feel and put your hands on and talk to those people, and not in that vendor, confrontation type style. Or
not in the office where,
yeah. And
I'll come back to that.
Yeah, but we've got a great group, and to your point, the two big things that really bootstrap any organization. It's not just the Chiefs Association, but any organization trying to do something. Number one, like you mentioned, is 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. Everybody's busy, but just that little bit of help from everybody and having a little bit of input from everybody is huge. And people sometimes think, well, I don't have the time for that, or it's too much, or I don't know what I'm doing, which is a big hurdle. And so one of the things we did this year, we have different committees. For instance, the legislative committee that works on legislation priorities. We have a small chiefs committee that works with those smaller agencies. We have a training committee, a handful of other committees. But one of the things we did this year was we put together a packet that had the committee name and then the input level, if you will, for that committee. So legislative committee, and it's got a high input value because we need you on it. You're going to be busy. Another committee, maybe that's got a low input value because you're not going to be all that busy with it. It's just kind of pinging things once in a while. And then we put together a paragraph of each committee about what they do under it. And what we found in doing that was a lot of people expressed that either A, they didn't think they had the time and they didn't know what that commitment level was. So having something that said this is high commitment, this is medium commitment, this is low commitment really gave them the opportunity to find where they would fit. And then
Good
the other
idea.
thing
Yeah.
is outlining that paragraph about what the committee does, because people say, oh, we have a legislative committee. Well, what do they do? And they don't know. You don't necessarily have to go to the Capitol every day. You don't necessarily have to write legislation. Maybe you're involved in a meeting. Maybe you express support or you don't like what we're doing. But outlining what those roles are was huge to get people involved. And then the second component of that's really a challenge that we're trying to work through is your point about people having a voice. We want to hear from everybody. And a lot of times, especially in an organization like the Police Chiefs Association, the smaller agencies feel like the large agencies run everything, right? And we don't want that. We want the smaller agencies involved. We want the smaller agencies to have a voice, but we need them to step up and have a voice and be part of it.
Yeah.
And find that way. And that's what our small agency committee is that's that connection point to reach out to those 1-man, 2-man, 3-man departments and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or what can we do to help you? Or what would benefit you? Whereas the larger departments may not think of that. And a couple examples of that, the last 2 years, Iowa has a peace officer bill of rights, like I think a lot of states do. It's called Chapter 80F. And a lot of administrators in smaller agencies don't have the resources or the experience or the knowledge to work through a disciplinary process. And so 2 years ago, we put out a Chapter 80F checklist that goes through the Peace Officer Bill of Rights, and you literally just check the box. Okay, is this formal or informal? Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? And they can use it if they want. They don't have to if they don't want to, but it's a resource for those smaller agencies that don't have those resources. This past year, we put out a similar document for hiring and recruitment that says when you hire someone, did you check, did you do fingerprints through the Department of Criminal Investigation? Did you check sources like TLO and stuff like that? Did you do a credit check? Did you do a social media check? And just outlines kind of these things that a group of departments came together and said, this is what we're doing. We took it all, put it in a document. If you want it, fine. If you don't, no. But a lot of people are like, oh, well, what's this or what's that? Because they didn't know.
Yep.
And that's huge for those smaller agencies and getting over that hump of me being afraid to come to you and ask for help because I don't want to look like an idiot, right? As your neighbor in chief.
Right. Yeah. And it's like everything's just a matter of scale. We generally have the same issues and same problems, but for a large metropolitan police department, they're just going to be handling a lot more of them. And so, like any job in life, the more you do it, the more contacts you have, the more experience you gain, the more efficiency you gain in that process. So if you're from a small agency, like I like to use the example of a homicide. If you have kind of an unusual homicide, maybe you don't have a clear-cut suspect. In your as a detective, you never worked a homicide. Where do you go for resources, right? And typically, the way that it's worked historically is your local municipalities will reach out to the state police or a state investigative bureau that can come in and provide some assistance. And so that's where relationships are become in really handy. And that's again, but I think just being present and participating in a group like a Chiefs Association, like you might have for organizations where you have regional detective meetings, patrol officer meetings, where you're just sharing general knowledge and information, like any fraternal organization. That's really what you're there for, is to number one, share the load and raise the awareness of everyone involved and hopefully get to the best outcomes. That was
absolutely. And the professionalism, the thing that, I kind of share all the time is, and I tell everybody, anything you need that I've got, I'll share with you. we're fortunate that we're a CLIA agency. And a lot of these smaller agencies, maybe they don't have policies or they don't have a policy on this or that. Send me an email and I'll send you my policy. And you can take what you want, leave what you don't, put an email out to the entire group, get everybody's policy and take what you want, leave what you don't. But ultimately, it's all about making every agency in the state better. It's not about me or our neighbor. It's about the profession as a whole. And across the state, everybody's saying, hey, Iowa's got it together. They know what they're doing. And that's really the goal of it.
Yeah. And sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And you need uh, someone or ways, mechanisms, and infrastructure in place to help you. And like the general, but here's the, like, kind of goes back to budgets and really just kind of this overall educating even local council members or state legislators, lawmakers on what the police are capable of, what they're not capable of, what they should be doing, and maybe where some of these ancillary tasks that were being asked or really that are being offloaded on the police, they don't if you don't participate, then you lose the opportunity to educate people on why something might work, why it might not work. um, yeah, there's about a million examples. The point being, the public doesn't care, right? If when someone calls the police, they expect a professional response and they want things done right and they want it done. It doesn't matter if you're in a 5 officer department or a 5,000 officer department. They just don't understand like the difference.
Right.
And I'll give you 2 examples just from today where there's somebody I follow on LinkedIn. He does a really good job of educating police departments on um, sovereign citizens and these First Amendment auditors, and he oftentimes can be critical of police officers when they don't handle a First Amendment auditor properly. And like today, he was kind of laying that on the chiefs, like, hey, you got to train your people better. And it's like, well, um, you can provide all the best training in the world. Officers have to participate and they have
Yep.
to engage. But in the end, like everybody has to be aware what the problem is. If you've never been presented with that, it's not something that's common in your community, and it's not been a priority for the officers or the agency, then sometimes you can get caught. A long way of saying this is why you participate in organizations like Chiefs organizations. So you get to share the lessons of others. And I'll give one really final quick example. And I guess this is where I was lucky. I was lucky early in my career. I got asked as a young SWAT officer, I got asked to participate in a newly formed organization in Indiana for Indiana SWAT officers, where they were doing the same thing, just trying to raise the professionalism of SWAT, higher level of understanding of training, techniques, equipment, technology, all those things. And one of the things that we had quarterly meetings, but we did debriefs, after action reviews. And just like, for a lot of agencies might do for a high profile call, we did that and we shared lessons from around the state. So we got to see what other people, and it was very candid and very open and very raw. And there was the understanding that what was said in the room stayed in the room, under the idea that we would all learn from, we want to learn from this. We don't want to repeat bad tactics or mistakes. And we want to learn what worked well. And, Chiefs associations, I think, have, the perfect opportunity to do something very similar. It's just, as a chief, you said it earlier, right? Sometimes we just don't want to appear to be less than or look silly in front of our peers, like, and so a little humility, be humble, and then also for having good people in those organizations that understand that instinctively and that would never bring that kind of attitude into a Chiefs meeting, Chiefs Association meeting. I mean, that's a very powerful opportunity. It can really raise the level of professionalism, not just in the state, but across the country.
Yeah, one of the things you hit on there was the why, and when we talked earlier, I told you I'm a huge culture guy. The agency I took over in Windsor Heights, they were the smallest in the metro. They had a history of retention problems with people going to the academy and then leaving for a bigger department. And I was very proud of the 5.5 years I was there. I had zero turnover. We lost one officer due to a work comp injury that work comp messed around with and didn't fix right. But for the smallest agency in the state, or not in the state, but the smallest agency in the metro, that's a huge accomplishment. And I hope to carry that on here with our retention here, but it all centers around culture. And when people are asking, they're like, "What are you doing that's keeping your people happy?" And they're not happy every day. Nobody's going to be naive and think that, right? But a guy told me one time it just sucks less here, and I'm like, fair enough. Um, but yeah, in my mind, it's all about that why. And First Amendment auditors are a great example. We have some in Iowa. They've been to Des Moines. They've been to the metro areas. They've been here. And when they showed up in Des Moines, I communicated with our team and I said, look, this is who they are. This is what they're doing. This is why they're doing it. They're doing it to get a rise out of you so that they can make you look like a fool or sue somebody. This is the reason why. And this is the reason why you need to not engage with them and keep your cool. And they came out here, and we had two officers that went on a call for them, did a fantastic job. Couldn't have asked for any better response out of them. But sharing that why is so critical, and that I think is where we either miss it or we wait for someone to come ask us why and then we answer it instead of putting that out there ahead of time. And if you put it out there with your message, I think it goes a lot further, and then you get that buy-in, whether it's the Chiefs Association or the officers or a local Chiefs Association. Sharing that why is just it's something that seems so simple, but we seem to miss it so much.
So, based on our last conversation, I was just kind of digging around, just looking at like just data, just trying to understand like how chiefs organizations can make things better for policing across the state. And there was a 2024 survey by IACP that said 78% of small agency chiefs cite a lack of influence in statewide decision making as a key barrier for moving agencies forward. And I'm curious, like, so that can be interpreted in a couple of ways. Well, number one, like, you can't have influence if you don't participate, and if you don't put your hat in the ring, then you're gonna, like, I think sometimes we may feel like we don't have a voice, but oftentimes that's self-inflicted because we don't take advantage of opportunities to have a voice. So I mean, in Iowa, do you guys have any plans or talks to maybe look at like models like California, others that are going to put some mandatory training and certification programs in place for chiefs, or even really, I guess, for any level of organization? Do you think there's benefit to that?
I do, and that's interesting because we regularly talk about this. Me and one of my friends at a neighboring agency talk about this quite a bit. In Kansas, they have a program called KPAS, which is a Kansas Police Administrator Seminar. It's a week long for people that are coming up and want to be chiefs. And there's blocks on budget, there's blocks on personnel, there's blocks on legal, and you get and of course, a week's not near long enough, but you get an insight. I know other states, Florida in particular, their Florida Police Chiefs Association, they have a new chiefs seminar and training. I want to say Illinois has one that we just ran across, and that's definitely something that I think the state could benefit from. We just in the last year and a half, implemented a state accreditation program. A lot of other states already have that. We now have an Iowa law enforcement accreditation program. So those agencies that maybe don't have the resources and time to hit a CALIA standard, they can hit the ILEAP standard, which looks at kind of those high liability policies and just tries to help them out and gives them some credentialing on that front. And we're a little behind in this space in my mind because I do think that it's important for chiefs to have at least a basic crash course in elected officials and government budgeting, because government budgeting is, as you know, is completely different than anything else that you deal with.
Yeah.
And people go in, and I even, my team, I try to educate them on it. They're like, well, we got this money, and so I can spend that money. I'm like, that's not how this works.
Yeah, that's a big
there's the
challenge.
general fund, but Having some of that just basic, just a quick overview where if they're hungry for it, they can dig in more. And we don't do that in Iowa. And it is something that I think is of value. I would like to see us, start up something for those up and coming chiefs like Illinois, where they go through this program and they get a certificate. And then when they go to get hired, they've got a certificate saying that they've been through a class and that they've had this training to become a chief. And um, one of the things that really irritates me, and I don't know how to fix it from in law enforcement, if you think about a new cop, we hire a new officer and we send them to a basic academy for 14, 16, 22 weeks, whatever it is. They come back, we put them through FTO for another 10 to 16 weeks, depending on where you're at, maybe longer some places. But we do a fairly good job at basic academy and FTO. And then a couple years down the road, they get promoted. And what do we give them? Nothing. And the higher you go, the less you get, right? You get a badge and you're like, here, go do your job. And I promoted two new sergeants in Waukee when I started over here. And one of the things we did with them was we did a kind of a makeshift sergeant FTO where we mentored them with another sergeant for a period of 4 weeks. And that way they kind of got to learn some things. They got to ask questions. The other sergeant was there with them, but they got to make the decisions. And, building that out at a sergeant's level, at a lieutenant's level, at a captain's level, and having something for chiefs, I think is critical because training is where we get our knowledge. But once you reach sergeant, for the most part, you don't have anything to prepare you for the next step. It's just we promote you and have a great day. Hope you do a good job.
Yeah, it's your technical and your tactical competencies that oftentimes get you promoted because you're good at your job, you're good at your role, and so people that are good in their roles tend to promote. And who are those people? They're the ones that generally tend to engage, that are self-starters, that seek out training, learning on their own. Yeah, and you're dead on. But here's the problem, right? Is like sometimes just because you're technically, tactically competent doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good leader or a good supervisor. And certainly not if you don't necessarily have an understanding of what your role is and what your influence on the organization is designed to be. And and I'll give you a good example of this, right? Because it was a mistake I made as a young sergeant, was trying to be the sergeant that's going to go run the calls and do everything, be more operationally oriented. And then you wind up trying to be all things to all people. And then you miss things that you should have caught by paying attention to what everyone else is doing. And then officers wind up getting disciplined or get into some issue because they make a poor policy decision or a poor tactical decision because their leader wasn't there to lead them. He was off, being, super cop. And
Yep.
so,
and that transition, in the fire service, they always harp on the buddy to boss transition, not as much in law enforcement, but that's hard. When you're up here and you're a shift buddy or a beat buddy, and you're out there in the trenches with people, and then you get promoted, and you got to take that step back, and you still want people to respect you. So you're like, I'm still going to be involved. But you have these other things that are your responsibility. That's a tough thing for people to do. And, it's unfortunate because I have seen some amazing cops and amazing people that are not worth a shit for leadership. It's simply because they can't be in a position where they upset someone and aren't friends with someone, even though it's a short duration, right? Because they're going to get over it tomorrow. They're going to be on to something else they're upset about. But you've got to be able to stand up and say, that's not what we're doing. This is what we're doing and why. And you may not like me today. I'm okay with that. Have a day or two to get over it and let's move forward. And you're right. Those people that get promoted are the ones that are out there, busting their ass every day. But that doesn't necessarily equate to leadership.
And the flip side I think to your point is also critically important. This is where we miss, and we'll get into some rapid fire stuff here because I know we're on a tight timeline today. This definitely would have loved to have delved into this one a little bit further. But if you give, to your point, like even all the way back in the late 80s when I was in the service, I had to go through a 3-week training course. They called it NCO preparatory school. Even though I was going to separate, I had no intention of staying. I was going to go to college. I wasn't going to stay in. I was enlisted. I still had to go through that course. And so that was 3 weeks of learning what it takes to be a supervisor. And if we were to do something like, number one, to do that in law enforcement, you need the time. So you have to have enough people. You need the budget, because you have to be able to train and bring in the right professionals to be able to do that. And that's really hard when you're just trying to cover the street and cover the calls for service. So that goes back to our very first discussion, is that you got to staff and budget appropriately if you want professional development and if you want professional policing. But the maybe a bigger lesson that often gets overlooked is when you do that, people learn, like, well, maybe that role isn't for me. Like maybe I don't want to be a sergeant. I just think I'm supposed to, because that's what, a career trajectory looks like. Maybe I should go into an ancillary role or a different collateral duty assignment and spend my time in specializations that I have a strong personal interest in and that I have a strong aptitude for. And we miss opportunities like that because we don't. We're very reactive. We're not proactive. So,
and even if you take that, back to the street level, I used to have the hard chargers come to me complaining all the time about the guy that comes in and just wants to take calls. I doesn't want to do any self-initiated activity. And I'm like, you realize that if I set on the same shift somebody that's a hard charger and somebody that wants to do nothing but take calls, that's perfect, because this person can do what they want, you can do what you want. Everybody gets the best of both worlds. And if I've got everybody that just wants to take calls and not do any self-initiated, or everybody that wants to do self-initiated, no calls, we got a problem. But if I can marry those strengths and weaknesses up and get people in the right seat on the bus, hell yeah, that just makes the organization better.
Love it. I love the Jim Collins reference there. Get the right people in the right seats on the bus. But all right, I know you've got to do a building tour. So with our last couple minutes remaining, give me the highlights. What were the priorities for this new building project, and what were some of the biggest takeaways from the project that you think you could share with others who might be getting ready to go through this process?
Yeah, so our project was really had a strong focus on member wellness, health and wellness, and then sustainability. And some people are going to cringe when I say sustainability. I get it. But the council goal was sustainability, and then internally we were hyper focused on wellness and taking care of our people. Um, to that point, if you come and walk down our hallways, at the end of every hallway, there's glass so that we have natural light coming in. The majority of the officers are set up where they have a window. Our break room for lunch and stuff is set up where it's got 3 or 4 windows across there. We spent a huge amount of money on a gym, and there's just about everything in there anybody could ever want. There's a roll-up door so they can roll the door up and have air go inside, go outside, and all of that was done, with the purpose of natural light, the employees having wellness, the employees having that want to be here, not necessarily a homely feel, right, but comfortable feel.
Oh, so like they're not going to work in a prison every day,
Absolutely, yeah, and
like
especially
old police departments
oh,
there. Yeah.
yeah. So, and then the sustainability aspect, of course, we want to be fiscally responsible to our community. This building was an enormous expenditure by the community. We were fortunate to have the support to do that. The total building project was right around $43 million, so it certainly was not cheap. And so in doing that, we want to make sure we're fiscally responsible with the taxpayer dollars. And so we've got geothermal to help offset some of those costs on the heating and air. We've got a solar array. It's not 100%. I think it's 25 maybe, to help offset some of those costs. The biggest thing that I would tell people if they've never been involved in a building project, or even if you have, my biggest thing would be to be involved in it. And I mean, daily, it's going to consume you, but you have to be involved in it. We would walk through here. They had the walls up. They didn't even have concrete on the floor yet. And I was walking through here pointing out where offices were, where rooms are. And one of the construction people told me, they're like, we have not had an owner that knew where their stuff was to that detail. And I'm like, I'm in the plans, I'm in the blueprints, I know what's going on, I know what goes where, I know why it goes there. And if you have that level of detail in your build, you're going to get a much better project than either being hands off or not having that level. And the other component of that was we hired an owner's rep. I think we talked about that before, but
Yes.
that
Yeah.
is huge. I'm a cop. I don't build things. I can't put four pieces of wood together and make a square out of it. That it's just not me. But having that person that's an
You're a
expert
cop and a firefighter, and you still
and a
can't do that.
firefighter,
That's saying something.
I destroy stuff, don't build stuff. But having that person that has that expertise where I can go to them and say, I don't like this. What about this, this, or this? And then being able to come back and say either this is why that needs to be like it is, or here's three or four options is crucial. It makes all the difference in the world.
So, well, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going to bring on somebody that was an owner's rep for our project. I can't scream that from the mountaintops more. And also think about owners reps in terms of things other than buildings. Like from let's just say, oh, you're going to bring in a new CAD and RMS system. Well, how about an owner's rep? Because that's going to be one of the biggest investments you make. It's going to affect a lot of people. But in terms of the design, I love it. The windows, like I mean, I wasn't joking. Just I said it in a joking way. That was the old model, right? You work like you got a building, it was old. Well, you know what? The police can use that. And that was kind of a mindset that just kind of permeated. So to have the community support where people realize, like, if we don't start investing in our police, there's not going to be any police there to invest in. And then you're going to wind up spending twice down the road. So yeah, give them some natural light, make them feel like they're coming into work where they're valued, give them the wellness and just like you would build a home, like you wouldn't let someone just build your house if you're paying for it, not have any say as to what's going to go where, right? You want it
Absolutely.
designed for how it's going to work for you and what your needs are. So
And
awesome.
it's
Kudos.
funny because I put up a picture of the new building on our social media the Sunday before the week we moved in. And one of the first comments that came up on there from the residents of the community was, I'm glad this one doesn't look like a fortress like the other one did. And people notice that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And if I was on a board for credit union, for nonprofit credit unions for a few years, and one of the things we talked about in building a new building for a credit union was if you think back, banks used to be hardened, all concrete walls, very few windows, blah, blah, blah. And when we were building that building, we had an architect talking to us, and they said that was the old days. People want trust now. They want to be able to see that they trust you. And it's not about the hardened, it's about windows. It's about showing them that you're a space they can come into and that they can trust you. And, when I heard that, I was like, I had never thought of that before. But it's true.
Yep.
If it's a hardened building that looks like it's closed off, how welcoming is that to somebody that needs to come in here and do business? Whereas it's an open building that's full of light and full of glass and hopefully great people, and we're here to support the community and do what we need to do.
That's awesome. Well, hey, I want to respect your time. I know you got a hard stop here in a couple minutes because you're going to go do a building tour for your fantastic new building. I'm going to ask you one quick question. You got one book recommendation to give to a future police leader or someone that's maybe one the most influential book on you. What's the book?
It's tough because there's so many great ones out there. But what I would tell you is not necessarily one, but Jocko, his series on extreme ownership. And it's funny you mentioned that because they're sitting right here behind me.
Love
But
it.
the strategies and tactics of leadership, extreme ownership, and the third one of
Yeah,
uh,
dichotomy of leadership, extreme
yeah,
ownership.
autonomy of
Yeah,
leadership. I'm
strategy
stuck
and
on this
tact.
other one I was going to mention too, but there's another book out there that's called The Arsonist in the Office.
Oh, all right. I haven't read that one.
It's a Pete Havel book. And so Jocko's stuff from a leadership standpoint, actually, when I did that process for the sergeants a couple years ago, we had 10 of our internal people competing for that. And I bought each one of them a copy of Extreme Ownership and gave it to them and told them, I said, you read this because this is good stuff. But The Arsonist in the Office is a great book. especially for those people. Everybody has them. You have the one person that's just a pain in the ass, and the arsonist in the office
More
is a
than
good
one.
about working through that, and not letting one person take you down. And if that one person's lighting that big of a fire, then you need to look internally and see what's going on too. But anything uh, anything that's John Maxwell related. One of our general managers of one of our dealerships here in town, his dad has a connection with John Maxwell, so when those books come out, I get them. There's just so much great stuff out there, and I don't like reading. I'll listen to a book on tape or something when I'm in the gym, just because if I'm reading, I feel like I'm wasting time. But there are so many amazing people out there that you can listen to and just learn something, and maybe it's what not to do, But
Absolutely.
I think the critical component of anything is being open to learn and knowing that you're not done growing.
All right. Well, if we had more time, I'd dig into that a little bit with you. There's no such thing as a bad book. There's just some are better than
Absolutely.
others.
Yep.
All right, Chief. I know you got to go. It's almost 3, and you got your tour. So I appreciate your time, spending your valuable time with us, sharing. This was a good, quick, rapid fire episode. If someone wants to reach out to you to ask about building project, department culture, the Iowa Chiefs Association, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, of course. Chad McCluskey, MCCLUSKEY. And if you search that name in Iowa, I'll pop up there as well. So, emails pretty rapidly available through the Waukee Police Department website. Happy to talk to anybody. And like I said, I truly will share anything that I have with anybody. And, I always learn something in doing that. So, we're our own worst enemy when it comes to asking for help or asking for advice from somebody. And the more you do that, the more it opens your eyes to maybe there's a better way to do things out there.
There you go. There's a book recommendation, folks. Ryan
There you go.
Holiday, Ego is the Enemy. Don't let
Yep.
your ego be the enemy. Appreciate it. I already know what our follow-up call is going to be. We're going to do another episode in about 6 months, and where we can ask, okay, now you've been in the building for 6 months, what would you do differently?
There's always something in there. Day one, I'm like, I planned this out so well, and this thing bit me in the ass. So,
Yeah,
yep.
well, you're not alone in that. You're not alone in that. So, Chief, I really do appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care. Thanks.